We have Bronze Age civilizations. In the case of Kerala, we have the Iron Age, the megalithic and all coming up. The period, as we said, is quaternary. That is about 2.5. We are talking about the history of the past 2.58 million years. And this is a period when we have prehistory. We start with the Paleolithic, and then, as we all know, we move on to the Mesolithic, then the Neolithic, and then we move to the Metal Age. But however, the change of culture is not linear. There are a lot of parallel events happening, and some of these in earlier cultural adaptations, they last for a very long time, and the change might be very, very slow. Okay, so quaternary is the last or period in the Cenozoic era, but it is, if we look at the entire history of the earth, which is 4.6 billion years, this is less than 0.01% of the geologic time. So in the Holocene, what we basically see is the end of the Ice Age. That means that's a warmer period, and its optimum level, though it starts by 11,000 years BP, before present, so that would come to approximately 9,000 BC or BCE. The peak of this, or the optimum of this climate condition, happens around 9,000 to 5,000 years BP. That would be, if we reduce 2,000 on an average, it would be, we are talking about the period from 7,000 BC up to 3,000 BC. That is a period that we talk about. This was followed by a gradual decline in temperature until about 2 millennia, 2,000 years ago. So we have 3 different climatic levels, but all of them are warmer, and it was warmer than the present. So the difference is now the rate at which the warming is happening is accelerated. It's not that it is not, it used to be warm in throughout the Holocene we are still in Holocene, and we are witnessing a warmer period. And it was preceded by the Ice Age. So we have the cyclic warm, cool, warm, that kind of a cycle happens, and within each you will again have smaller cycles where it could be, since immediately after the Ice Age you will be having a slightly warmer. When we say warm, it means before, it is warmer than before. It's always in relative terms, and then at the second stage it becomes little bit more warmer, and then it comes down. So there is a kind of a cycle, means you start, then you go to the peak, and then you have to come back. So all this happens, and this is how we have to comprehend this most defining thing in our life, that is climate, and how it influences our environment, and how it actually translates into a cultural record in a site or in a region. Can we have the next slide? Okay, so now there are a lot of models by which we can look at it. Now there are traditional models by which we will be looking at one particular aspect and think that is the most important reason for a change in culture, because archaeology usually deals with understanding the change in cultures, why a particular culture has changed, what are the reasons for it, etc. So now what we can do is we can do a kind of a regional approach. We can look at a large area. We can look at the Arabian Sea context. We can look at the Indian Ocean context. When we talk about monsoon, which is one of the most defining aspects of our climate, we often tend to look at a very large area, and we may not get results, or we may not get data which would actually supplement what exactly happens on the ground. So we have to take smaller regions, smaller units to work with. So we look at regions on the basis of some defining environmental feature. For example, we all know that there are 44 rivers in Kerala. This is something that we have learnt. However, in the beginning of the Holocene, we had numerous rivers. So that means the number of water bodies were more at that time. Now, if the number of water bodies have increased, that shows that there was a wetter climate. So, just before this, we were talking about a warmer climate that is typical of the Holocene period. But warmer doesn't mean it cannot be wetter. The monsoon is there, that means we have got a wetter climate and we have got numerous water bodies in the early Holocene, in the mid Holocene, and towards the end we see that now we know there are 44 major rivers. Now if we look at the fields, paddy fields in Kerala, we can see them whenever we are crossing the road. We would see that the paddy fields are quite different from what we see in other states in India. They tend to have a meandering feature. So now we know that rice fields do not meander, it is the rivers that meander. Particularly in the middle course of the river, you see this meandering feature. Why are our rice fields? If we take a Google image, we can clearly see this. So that, particularly if you are on a higher ground, and we have a lot of mounds in different parts, like Kerala has got a very undulatory terrain. So we do find small hillocks here and there. And if we can go up and have a view, then we will see this aspect, this feature will be very, very clear to us. So that shows that many of these are the paleo channels. That is the channel of a former river. So we are looking at ancient riverbeds. So our study started here. Study started with this observation. This observation was not part of any project that actually wanted to look at climate. Instead, it was something which was looking at one particular culture, that is the Iron Age in Kerala. We were looking at that, but we saw this feature, this unique feature came to our mind. So this is one area where we are actually looking at an ancient river or a river channel or a dry river bed. We can call it by any name like paleo channel, etc. So sometimes we know in history there are records for certain ports, certain sites, but we don't get actual on field, on the ground, we are not getting evidence. So that prompted us to ask the question whether we are looking at the right place. So most of these things are defined by the rivers, our settlements are defined by rivers, river basins. Are we looking at a river? If we are looking at a 2000-year-old early historic port, then we have to be looking at where the river was flowing 2000 years ago. Often what happened was, we were looking at the present river and then hoping to find something which is 2000 years old or more. So that is where in a place like Kerala these kind of studies are extremely significant and crucial. So understanding the ancient land use and the landscape is very important in understanding the past cultures. Now these things became quite clear to me. I would say not very clear, but little bit more clarity I got after the 2018 floods. Because you're actually seeing all this in front of your eyes. So in certain parts of Periyar we went after the flood, we went and we looked, we interviewed people. And then they said, we have been living very close to the river and we know it. Our house has witnessed floods even before. This was the line of the previous flood. In 1960, there was a flood. In 1980s, there was a minor flood. They'll give you the entire flood history, those who are living close to the river Periyar. And what we saw was that a lot of silt was deposited almost at the middle of the river in some regions of Kottamam in Aluva. Now when we look at the place name, then you start finding names like Mukham. Mukham means mouth. It probably indicates, the mouth of the river. Tod is a small stream, a tributary perhaps, which joins a major river. So, there's a lot of clues in the place name itself. So that region we saw that a lot of silt was deposited. The rivers was initially flowing here like this. Now there's a lot of silt here and the river is flowing here. Okay, so if you have a major flood, perhaps on an average a major flood is documented in Periyar once in a century. So in 100 years, the river which is here has shifted like this. We are talking about 1000 years, then this has happened 10 times. So the river which is here now, 1000 years ago was there. Perhaps. Now these things are, as a model, we can imagine, but then we really need solid evidence. So we need to take course and we need to dredge and we need to find such studies. We need evidence, solid evidence from the field. So that's why we decided to go as a team to this field. And we started from the present river and the different channels of the river. This is at the first photo, that is from, this one is from Arattagadavu, this region. And then while we were moving across the national highway, you all would see this because now the national highway extension is happening. So there is a lot of dredging that has taken place. Because they have to, for each pillar that comes up, they have to dredge and take the sample. So we can actually make use of this data which is easily available above the ground now. So this gives us the entire geologic history of this region. And this, on closer examination, we can see these kind of peat deposits. This helps us to understand the past vegetation. So that tells us a lot about the climate. Also we can we can get radiometric absolute dates, OSL dating, which is an modified version of the thermoluminescence or TL dating, which is dating of the minerals, and so that is another which we are planning to do. That can be done only during the summer season, because now all this is inundated and most of these are wetlands and marshy lands, so there's a lot of inundation here. So we need to wait for the summer so that we can get better samples from the same region. So this was in the outskirts of Ernakulam, in the Paravur region. So that made us very confident to look more closer to the town, to the city of Ernakulam. So then we see these small streams and dry river beds everywhere. When we normally move from one place to other, if we will be seeing a lot of bridges, small bridges, lot of water bodies we will be seeing. So that means initially, before the bridge, these were very clearly defined natural boundaries were there. And so once we can imagine that in the period before these modern amenities came, then it becomes slightly easier for us to understand how people would have lived in this region before. So Armed with this, after about 6 months, we went for the second field work. And this second field work, we looked at other parts. In fact, we were also looking at agriculture. As I said, our initial journey was to look at agriculture, look at the origin of pepper and pepper cultivation, hinterland, maritime connections, okay, and also the origin of rice. These were some of the initial concerns that we had, and we chanced upon this, which was there in our mind for a very long time, but we were not getting there was no concerted effort. I think we were not asking the right questions to these records which were available in front of us always. So we started asking we were prompted to ask certain new questions because our concerns are different today. Our present society's concerns are different. So we also had similar concerns, and we tried to look at this data. Can we have the next? Yeah, okay. So then we moved slightly upland, the Periyar, up the river Periyar. We all know about Kaladi. Kaladi is a very famous place. There is a very small village nearby. It is known as May Kaladi. Now in Malayalam, Male means on top, high, up. So the place name is giving us a very prominent clue that it is an upland, it's a highland. So you have Kaladi is there, and then there is an elevated portion close to it, and that is May Kaladi. We can see most of these places on this very modern new map which we have. You can see Malayatur here, Neeleshwaram here, then you see May Kaladi here. This is the river. You can see the river here. This is Kaladi, closer to the river. And this is May Kaladi, slightly away from the river. This is a Todu, Kottamam Todu. So there is a place near Kaladi known as Kottamam. Kottamam is more famous, I think. So it's a larger settlement, and this is the Kottamam Todu. Why is this significant in Kerala's history? Is because we have got lot of polished stone access from here for the past 20 years. 2 decades consistently, one person who is a resident of this place, he has been collecting it on a daily basis. And he has got many things, but the most significant among those are the polished stone cells. Most of them are in his own collection, private collection. Some of them he has donated to a government museum in Thiruvananthapuram. So most of the people would go see his collection. But from where did this collection come? What is the context of these artifacts? That is of more interest to us. So we went here to this Todu. So we are deep in a river terrace. Now how did all these discoveries happen? It is because of sand mining in the river. So sand was mined extensively. So we were, digging into the riverbed. And at some point we reached an earlier layer of the river. And every day he would go there, he would collect. So it was an enigma. Why are we getting only from here? Okay, and why do we get this? This is not a primary context. It has clearly traveled from somewhere else because the water has carried it and it has been deposited here. That was our first hypothesis. We are still at the hypothetical level because we are still working on, many teams are working on this material. The second question was, what is this raw material by which these stone axes are made? And we found it is dolerite. Now, do we have dolerite in the surrounding region? That was the next question. So major sections of dolerite is not available, but some of the geologists say that there are certain dolerite dikes available in the region. So we are talking about a group of people who knew that land so well, knew about a very fine, different rock type that could be used to make a tool. So that is also of great interest to us. But what is more interesting is that if it was on the river Periyar, had we found it from the bed of river Periyar, then the story would have been different, because we are dealing with a very long river. So the origin of the tool would have been, somewhere kilometers away. But in this case, this is a less than 25 kilometer long stream, and this is at the fag end of this stream, Kottode. And then after that it meets the river Periyar. So the Tode is at one level and the river is at a slightly lower level. That is why the water flows from here by the principle of gravity into the Periyar. It flows into the river Periyar. So this gives us a lot of hope. We are talking about a 23 kilometer long place, and just look at the surrounding region up to Ayyampuza plantation region around Kaladi. If we do an intensive exploration, we are very hopeful that we would be able to find exact reasons why we are seeing the largest collection of polished stone axes in Kerala from this region. It has not been sporadic occurrences, one or two have been reported for a very long time, almost 200 years. From various places, one or two have been reported, but this is unique. This is one reason, and the second reason is we are also finding the grinding stones. So that indicates it was not just used here, but it was also made here. So we also find evidence of the making of these tools. So that makes it all the more, this site becomes all the more significant. But something else that caught our eye is that he has got an old house which is almost 100 years old. This the collector has got a house which is more than 100 years old, his Taravada. And when we went down to the river, it was almost about 5 to 6 meters deep. And then on top of this mound, this old house is there. And then in order to get inside the house, you have to go up about 6 steps, 1 feet each. That means 6 feet high. And then inside the house, you have got another small, attic kind of a setup. So we asked why do we have all this? So he said it's because of the floods. So 100 years ago, we were so sensitive to these aspects. We are not building houses in the Nilam. There is a separate word called Pureidam. That is, there's a special place which is a high ground, dry ground, which is marked to build a house. That would explain why there is a paucity of that kind of land where you can actually have a house. You are surrounded by wetlands, and you got certain patches where you can actually live. So that perhaps would explain one of the reasons why we were not having nuclear households. We were having joint housing units. That could be one of the reasons why we developed that kind of a system. This could be a response to what was the condition around us. Now, can we have the next slide, please? We are moving on. We have been at each level. We became more confident. So we moved to the heart of the city, Kakanad. Okay, the first thing that we could probably do today is, before we go to the field, there are a lot of technology available, particularly the Google map is going to tell us a lot before we actually go to the ground. And this is one way in which we would be using it. This is a Google map. We see a lot of structures here and we wonder why there are no structures here. Okay, those are the wetlands that remain. Okay, the marshy land that remain. The rest of many, we have leveled it, we have raised it, and we have started building, having huge constructions here. Here also, there are so many flats coming up, so you have a lot of dredging happening. So you get a lot of record, on the ground. You don't actually have to do it to begin with this kind of an inquiry. And then we actually went to the real spots and we did a preliminary investigation or an exploration. And this is one such wetland. How are these wetlands created? Geomorphologists give different reasons, and one of the simpler reasons would be that constant wet conditions. So there is too much of water, lot of water, that means beyond the carrying capacity of that particular river or water body. And then silt deposits would seal some of the places where the water could flow. So the water is not flowing, the water is stagnant, the water is there. So such places gradually evolve into these wetlands. So what is the possibility of a wetland as far as human settlement is concerned? The wetlands could be one of the places where lot of possibilities for the origin of agriculture or farming is there. So in many places in South India, we talk about irrigation for cultivation. Whereas here, I think we have to think the other way around. We have to think about, we have excess water and we have to drain water. So we drain water from some of the water bodies or the wetlands, and then it can be ideal for rice cultivation. Now this rice cultivation could be two ways. One could be broadcasting the seeds, and the other one would be transplanting the rice. So transplanting means you have another place where you will first, germinate it, and then you have these small plants, and then you would plant it again. Okay, this is ideal for, higher yield. Okay, you will have more regular, very standardized looking, grid looking fields we will have. But our aim is not all this. Our aim is to subsist, to live. And this becomes a subsistence strategy. That is, agriculture becomes a subsistence strategy. You don't look for this heavy technology. After the floods, there is a lot of flood that has happened, and alluvial deposit is there, silt deposit is there, which is very fertile. Even if you just broadcast some seeds, you will get a good yield. Even perhaps to some extent of surplus. So that is one possibility of the early origins of agriculture during the Holocene in certain parts. So instead of looking at irrigation, we have been looking for the evidence of irrigation. Irrigation evidence is there in the form of tanks in Tamil Nadu, in many megalithic sites or Iron Age sites. So we were looking for that. I think we should be looking for something in the opposite direction. We should be looking for how these draining of water can take place. What were the techniques used for the draining of water? So here, this entire thing actually, if we dig up, you will see all this will have this kind of water. It's just that there is some overgrowth on top of it. So just before the rains every year, this kind of a dredging takes place, so that there is, to prevent floods. This is what every panchayat or every municipality will do. Okay, so this was done. What happened as a result? The excavator is used to do this, so much of this peat deposit here had come up where we are standing. So we find peat deposit here which can be dated. Now we have not taken from here, we will wait for the dry summer season, then we will go back to this region, and then we will have to collect samples from there, give it for OSL dating and wait for the dates. So that way we will be able to date the conditions here, what were the climate we can look into hopefully, and thus we will be able to understand. Now this place that I am talking about is maybe 1 kilometer from the Trikakara civil station. So this is, to do this kind of study is not something that we have to do far away. It is there in our backyard. So that is another revelation that takes place when you are dealing with these kind of studies in Kerala. Yes, is that our last slide? Yes. So we have looked at 3 different regions, and then some of the samples which we have collected, and what can be done with it, and some of the preliminary field observations I have shared. This is just the beginning of these kind of studies in Kerala, and so we will have to move very cautiously, and we have to wait for more studies and more data we need. And something which is not related to wet conditions, but something interesting that I would like to share is, we moved a little bit further. There was a discovery of a ring well in a place in Kodugallur in Thrissur district. So we went there, and we found that we are standing on a dune. Now, dune is something that we think in terms of Thar desert. We think of dune. If we study Gujarat, then Mesolithic, then we know that some of the Mesolithic settlements were on stabilized dunes. But I had never come across the idea of a dune in Kerala. But then we happened to find evidence for it in 3 different localities. So what I am trying to say is, we have to keep our eyes and ears open. And then we would see things, we see it once, then you know that this you should expect. And so in the next 2 sites also we were able to observe it. And these dunes are 2.5 kilometers from the Arabian Sea. It is near Kanoli. On one side you have the Kanoli Canal, and then you have the Arabian Sea, and in between you have a highly raised ground. This place has got a lot of archaeological sites of different periods. Iron Age is there, perhaps early historic is there, early medieval is there. So, and modern is also there. So, early historic we may have to look at, but we have already got evidence for Iron Age, and then the medieval and modern. So that is another possibility that we can look at, and I am sure all this is going to redefine the way we understand the history of Kerala, particularly the early history of Kerala. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that lecture. We are opening the session to Q&A. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I will pass the microphone to you. Nitin over there also has a microphone, so if you have a question, please raise your hand.
Ma'am, first, thank you so much for giving us something that we are not really familiar. I mean, we are used to. It's very different. I just want to know, although you haven't included it in here, I'm sure that you must have thought about Muziris and the way that the course of the river has changed in regarding that. So I just wanted to know about your perspectives and your observations regarding that. Okay. And also, I'd like to know if you have got any, photos of those dolerite tools that you mentioned about.
Yes.
Would you have?
We do have.
Okay. Thank you so much.
We know that first I'll talk about the dolerite. Those studies are happening along with the Department of Geology at Christ College, and so we are waiting for the detailed report on it. I'm sharing, as I said, I'm sharing the field observations which we made, which are very preliminary to begin with. Yes, as you said, Muziris is something that we all would be interested in actually knowing more about. So most of that's like our vantage point, We start from there and then we try to look at other aspects. So understanding the ancient coastline 2000 years ago, where the coast was. Today we did not talk about coast at all. Coast is more dynamic than this perhaps. So we have umpteen cases of marine regression and transgression which have been reported. So we need to look at the coastline 2,000 years ago, and we also have to look at how these fluvial, these river systems, how they were interacting with the sea at that point of time, with the Arabian Sea at that point of time. We have got evidence from one place and we were very happy with whatever we got. We should have looked around, combed a wider region. So what I shared was that we looked at one site, one early historic site, and we saw certain features of a dune. So often what happens is, if archaeologists go alone, we would not perhaps record or observe all this. So a multidisciplinary team is very important. So that is perhaps the most important thing in understanding all this. So we looked at one site, we got this clue of a dune, then we looked at other sites and we saw it. So I feel after the excavations of 9 seasons in Kottamam, or even after the discovery in the first season, we should have actually looked at the wider region. We should have done a very intensive detailed exploration of the entire region, starting from Paravur up to Kodungalur. So in Kodungalur also we get a lot of evidence for the early medieval period. So the early historic is just before that. So it is too early for us to conclude that we have got early historic in one place, early medieval in another place. We have to actually look at the entire region once again, and then we would be able to understand better. That is not going to diminish the role of Kottamam in any way, because we have got solid archaeological evidence from there. I think the Kerala Department of Archaeology, Kerala University, had looked at Vizhinjam, and there are attempts at looking at other ports as well. That is another thing that we have to do. Not just looking at Muziris, looking at Tindis, looking at Nelkanda, all these. So we have got small sites here and there. We have initiated our studies there. We need to sort of connect all these dots. That is very important. So one of the ways of doing that would be to understand from the environmental point of view. That would help us, understand the landscape better. So a landscape approach would be perhaps help us to ask new questions and thereby get new answers. So I feel, as you asked, we need to actually find the ancient coastline. We need to do studies related to that and the 2000 years ago where all the rivers were, and then look at those. There could be slight changes because you have to consider the Arabian Sea, you have the backwaters, and then in between now you also have the dunes, you have these different beach ridges. All these things are reported. Archaeological sites are also reported here and there. We need to put it all together, integrate all this, and then we will be able to understand the history of Kerala much better. Yeah.
Good evening, madam, and thanks for the very informative presentation. I would like to ask us that as an archaeologist, you may not be doing drilling and taking sample, you may be doing excavations.
Yes.
But as this national highway work is going on, they are doing the drilling.
Yes.
Maybe at different depth of excavation, maybe you can collect samples and see what type of soil has deposited over the years or maybe over the centuries, and check. Because I have seen in my native place near Tiruvalla, when wells are dug,
Yes.
we can see that at a very 1 foot, we can see different type of soil.
Yes. Stratigraphy. Yeah.
Yes, and so we can understand so much soil has come from the
Yes.
river and deposited, and so much height has developed.
Yes. True, sir. See, stratigraphy is one of the basic methods that we use in the archaeological sites as well, be it in the case of Kottamam or any other site for that matter. And we have been in Kodungalur also in the excavations in the vertical trenches. We have been getting towards the end lot of river deposits. So we look at, as you said, the size of the sand particle would tell us whether it is, and also the nature of the sand particle, sediments would tell us whether it is of river origin or whether it is of belongs to the beach. And it also gives us, it is on the basis of these along with the satellite maps that we have, that I said that the paleo coastline can be reconstructed. So these studies are all happening in different places. We have to put it all together. Most of these data is available at some point from different sites. It's just that we have never put it all together. We have to integrate it and ask these questions so that we get to understand what was happening in the entire region, instead of just looking at one site and saying this was happening in this particular site, and in another site this was happening during this period. We need to look at we have to have a regional approach. So the entire region, what was happening in that region at a particular point of time, and what was also the environment conditions and climatic conditions. Since we were talking about the Holocene climate, that is where these cores are very important to us. So in the archaeological context, we don't go this deep. We don't have to. We will be looking at maximum in the case of Kerala. I think the deepest trench that we would have would be 5 meters, isn't it? Around 5 meters, I think, in Kerala. So that is if you take a trench at the height of the mount, at the thickest, where the mound is at its thickest, that point. So yes, the method that you suggested is the method which is being used now. It's just that data is available here and there, it is scattered, it is with multiple agencies. Even if we look at Kottamam, it has gone through 3 different agencies have got the material. 3 different agencies. I mean, at least the major exploration, at least 3 different agencies. So, in the case of Kerala, I think from these archaeological sites, lot of this material is moving and they are not being properly documented. And even when you ask these questions, we don't actually get access to this kind of data. And a scholar will be forced to go through this process again and again. So, these are some of the problems perhaps that makes our inquiry very, very slow.
Good evening, Dr. Peter. I had a couple of questions.
Yes.
One is regarding this dune that you were talking about.
Yes.
Is satellite imaging, in the sense of remote sensing technology, being used, which is a new and upcoming application, at least in other fields? Is it being used to identify particular sites based on satellite imaging, which is non-invasive? This was one of my questions.
Yes.
My second question was, how are we communicating this kind of research and these findings to the general public? So I'm just an enthusiast.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've addressed any of this. I was half an hour late.
Okay.
Because of my
No.
Yeah, because of my train from Kottamam. So I come here just to listen to this, and I
Yes,
know there are
thank
a
you.
lot of people who are interested in this.
Yes.
So besides talks like this, how is the Department of Archaeology or History trying to communicate this to people? These are two of my questions.
Yeah. What was your first question? Your first question was how imagery and non-invasive techniques are being used, right?
Is it being used and is it being explored?
Yes. Satellite imagery has been used for a very long time. When we go for field work, the first thing that we do, even standing on the field, the first thing that we do is we need a bird's eye view. We need a picture of the entire region that makes you, gives you a proper sense as to what we are dealing with. What is the gravity of the mass of data that we are dealing with. That's very important. So satellite data is being used on an extensive scale, and GIS and all the other techniques which are associated along with it are all being used. But I think more than all this, what is important is to ask these questions. These questions are not being asked. That is where we have been, that is why perhaps it took so long. It's not because archaeologists or geologists or geographers or historians have not visited the sites that I have been talking about. Arabian Sea is there, Canoli Canal is there, these mounds have always been there, people have been doing agriculture there, they have been digging up the soil, we have built roads there. Still we have failed to notice that these formations are there because we never expected those. So to begin with, perhaps when we study all these, we study about all this happening in Rajasthan, happening in Gujarat. When I work in Kerala, I don't expect to use all these things here. But then suddenly when I heard the word dune, then I looked closely at it and I felt, yes, the soil itself is so different. You don't see anything else in it. You just see soil, same type, slightly reddish soil, which would be coming up. Munson color chart, the reading we will take. We will do the basic preliminary observations there. We will take the soil sample from there. That is the first part. So non-invasive techniques are being extensively used. But I think we have to ask the right questions. The second point is, how do we actually take it to the public? How do we actually take it to the classroom even is a challenge. So I think museums would be one place where a lot of non-formal education takes place. So these things will have to be in a scientific journal, refereed journal, and then you need all these results, and then only, these are all preliminary observations. We need to, a lot of change would finally take place when the real results come. It would be quite different, I'm sure. And so, but in a museum setup, suppose you are talking about environment on a particular day, about the climate in Kerala, say something on the monsoons, a history of monsoon. So these, I think museums would be able to do it to a great extent, and I think our textbooks perhaps would take time, because publications, I feel, always happen, at least in archaeology, at around after about 2 decades of discovery of sites. There's so much of post-excavation analysis. I think there's a lot of excitement as far as excavation and field work is concerned, and then it is out of the public domain. Then there is a problem with funding, and we don't have sufficient researchers. They have to be there consistently for a very long time. Whatever we know about the Harappan civilization did not happen in one department with one student. It happened with many departments. Many students have worked on it. So that is not happening in the case of Kerala, no? So maybe I think I can count the handful of PhD dissertations would have come on the archaeology and early history of Kerala, and out of which how many would have actually dealt with addressed questions like this. Even there might be a few on geomorphology, but they would be talking about one particular river basin or one particular aspect of it. So I think we need to definitely, it's needless to say, this has to be taken to the public, particularly in today's context. I think particularly with children, a problem with our geography teaching, I feel. We will teach them a river, but we won't take them to a river. We will teach them about a beach, we will never take them to a beach. So we don't show them a backwater. We tell them, oh, this is a backwater, and they don't have direct contact with it. I'm talking about, we have seen sites which are just half a kilometer. There will be 100 flats, apartments there. There will be 1,000 students, children there. None of the child would have access to this. So I think somewhere we need to really use the different media to actually tell people to be more sensitive to how we are actually handling our wetlands and where we are actually building our houses. We need to be little bit more in touch with soil, with earth, I feel.
We can continue with the discussion a little. Oh, there's one more question.
Just one more question, sorry.
Yes.
Is there an incentive for people when they dig for roads or when they find artifacts? Is there an incentive from the government or anything to participate in this process, provide these artifacts? Or is it purely voluntary? Because I know that, I hope the question is clear.
Yes.
There is a lot of material with people which is not documented. And is there an incentive for them to bring it to the public or to participate in this process?
I think the scene is slightly better than before because there has been a lot of awareness related to all this. But I don't think it is because the government has set up a mechanism for it. It is because of a kind of a public awareness related to these, thanks to the social media perhaps. Most of our discoveries are now coming first in the social media and in the news, in the form of newspaper reports. And then only some research scholars would know about the site, and then they will reach there, and destruction of the sites is happening on a large scale. Intentionally, knowingly as well as unknowingly, it's happening. But there are, as you said, there are collections. When we did this fieldwork in the Periyar Basin, we were looking at certain sites where some gold coins were found. And then the people around were saying, no, you are looking at only one place. Gold, some amount of gold was also found in some other regions. Okay, so there are, what we are talking about is what we have found. It's only the tip of the iceberg. The rest is yet to be shared with us perhaps. So I think we have to have a more transparent mechanism by which people would be encouraged. Rather than just leaving it to scholars, it would be best if the people, public, are the custodians of our heritage, and they handle it more sensibly and responsibly rather. And I think that training has to happen from very early classes, and students should be allowed to handle these things so that they understand. Sometimes we have these kind of experiential learning programs in our museums where we let them handle these objects from the past, and that gives them a kind of a sense of responsibility. And I think it has definitely, having a museum open would allow people to come and tell you that there are some old things in our place. I think that is very important. Museums are that way. playing a very important role. It's just that perhaps museums have not understood that role very well, or they have not projected that role very well. If we do that, then I think more people would be willing to come up and share whatever information they have. Many of the observation, when I say field, it is the information that we have got from the people who actually picked up these artifacts. Okay, what their observations. We ask them the right questions. That's all. So then sometimes they won't be able to answer. In the evening they will call up, or the next time when I go, he will tell me, okay, last time you asked this question, this is the answer, I think, those kind of. So it's a collective effort. We don't have immediate answers. We don't have ready-made answers to give. We will have to do it collectively. And I think we can definitely do that. The people are quite sensitive to all this. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Very fascinating talk, and to be reminded that these early history is like right around the corner from where you live. But what got my interest also is the fact that to look at agriculture from a completely kind of opposing point of view, to remove water rather than bring water to it. And I'm just wondering, because there are other parts of the coastline,
Yes.
Bengal for example, which also has a lot of wetlands of similar kinds. Has there been any kind of similar studies in that place about introduction of agriculture in that area?
Okay.
I do also know that in the Indus Valley,
Yes.
in the early Ice Age, when when it was kind of becoming wetter, there were wetlands of a kind.
Yes.
So would you see similar structures there as well? I'm just curious.
Yes. Okay. I think the studies related to agriculture itself, in looking for it in archaeological sites, has been a recent phenomenon. We have been looking at Harappan cities, town planning. We've been looking at urban aspects. We were more looking at the urban aspects. We were not examining agriculture very seriously to begin with. There have been attempts. It's not that nobody looked at it. Definitely there were a lot of interest in it, but then it was always dominated by other kinds of narratives in most of these areas. Now, if we are looking at urbanism, then we are talking about the surplus agriculture, which is it's a prerequisite to it. And we also have to look at subsistence agriculture. So it's from the Neolithic onwards that we start talking about the origins of agriculture. In the case of Kerala, unlike in Bengal, definitely we have early evidence for rice. From Bihar we have evidence for rice. From the entire Gangetic, it's a Gangetic plains, we have these evidences. There we have these flat lands, lowlands, not the terrain is quite different from here. So that is one of the major reasons, major differences that we can see when we compare Kerala with Odisha and Bengal. So yes, see, when we talk about the draining of the excess water or managing, basically it is water management. Whether you are adding water or you are removing water, it's a form of water management, some kind of a hydraulic management which would lead to state formation, etc. But was it like so structured to begin with? Was there, because we are also we know that there were a lot of rice varieties in Kerala, and Wayanad has got one of the largest varieties, largest varieties of rice even now. So in this place itself we have got the Pokkali fields, and then you have the coal fields in Thrissur. So we are talking about I think very micro zones, with very different environmental conditions, and people living there who have to find a way of working around it. That is what I am imagining, or that is what I could imagine at the moment, but we need to spend more time in the field and ask these questions again and again. I'm sure with more people asking, I'm sure we will be able to come back with more to share. Yeah.
Thank you for this wonderful talk. I have a bad throat, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
When you mentioned about dewatering, what came to my mind was the paddy lands of Kuttanad. And I've read that, probably in the 19th and 18th century, those were reclaimed from the backwaters, the Wetland backwaters.
Yes.
So you're talking something similar that might have happened centuries before when the agriculture spread. And also the Pokali paddy lands, the dewatering, I don't know about the Kuttanad paddy cultivation techniques, but in Pokali paddy lands, that is the first step before you actually sow the seeds. The dewatering is the most critical step. So you're definitely referring to a particular kind of agricultural practice, which is even practiced today. Both the reclamation of the wetlands for agriculture in the last 2 centuries, and even the Pokali paddy lands, the larger Pokali paddy lands of Chalanam, etc. We clearly see a strategy of reclaiming the backwater and taking the clay from one spot and raising the land. So you have what we call the Vellachal, which is deep, and then the paddy land, which is higher. So with an outer bund in the backwaters.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
It's a very, it's a very amazing technique. There's lots to learn actually. We have lots to learn from the past. Yes. Thank you for sharing. And I think ethnographic observations like this are crucial in understanding the record that is in front of us, because it helps us to ask some good questions at least, and then we'll definitely wait for the answers. Yeah.
We can continue the discussion a little later, but for now I am inviting Aditi Zakaria, the director of Kerala Museum, to speak a few words.
Hi everyone, we're on a tight schedule because the camera battery is about to go. So we're always racing against time for this. So from the bottom of our hearts, from the museum, from the foundation, and from the Judith Foundation as well, thank you so much for your generosity, for your kindness in coming and sharing your knowledge and your ideas. This is a small token of our appreciation. We hope you don't have this book yet. We really, thank you for also saying that the museums can play a huge role in centering these discussions. And that's what we're hoping to do with Janal. And let's hope that more conversation takes place around these topics here. Hopefully, introduce it and then wait for things to grow. Yeah.
Thank you,
Dr.
Thank you for giving me